So I'm going to show you a case study primarily, but I'm also going to give you my thoughts on native advertising because I feel like it's just a logical movement that we're sort of kind of moving towards. It's, the web wasn't really ever designed to be polluted by kind of little squares and leaderboards and things like that. That I think all of us that work in digital marketing would sort of hate making them and never click them. So to me, it sort of feels that it's really great that we've reached this point where we've got people like BuzzFeed and Twitter who are actually finding smart ways to create content that is actually contextually relevant and actually fits in with the user's experience. So when I looked at the definition of native advertising, you can get this on Wikipedia, you get it down to this pithy line, basically, which is native advertising is an online advertising method in which the advertiser attempts to gain attention by providing content in the context of the user's experience. That's it in a nutshell. And I think the funny thing with it is we struggle a lot of the time, especially in, I suppose, the advertising discipline, to go longer form with our content. We all sort of, I think, want to make films or want to make longer form stuff, but actually it's a real skill that comes with it. And I think this is where sort of journalism fits back in, witty writing. I mean, obviously you've got the benefits when it comes to Twitter of 140 characters, but when it comes to BuzzFeed, you've got to kind of push yourself that much further. But I feel like it's user-first advertising is really what we're talking about here. It's actually about you knowing the platform, knowing your brand, and also kind of giving people a really great experience in that environment. This I felt was a really good summary of native advertising and how it's split up. Today I'm going to really talk to you about social, and I'll be truthful, I'm getting my head around the editorial side still. But ultimately and my team are more familiar with the social side of things, running pages, using sponsored stories, which is soon to sort of finish, but also page post likes and stuff, but bringing brands to life on their own platforms. The editorial side is a really interesting space, and one we'll obviously learn about from the guys later on. But ultimately, if you see here, you've got the ad platforms far left, you've got the platforms, and then again, you've got it here. This is from a great company called ShareThrough, which you should look up. They also have a leaderboard on native advertising as well. If you go to nativeadvertising.com, I shared it on the hashtag. It's a great way to see the type of content that actually is working. Anyway, let's take you to how we approach it. So this is, I suppose, how the Monkeys team have sort of diluted it down. And ultimately, we work in these sort of 4 quadrants, which is strategy, content, advertising, and analytics. And we do all 4 all the time. I think a lot of people approach native advertising as, and they make some content and they chuck some advertising on it. And they're not laddering back to their strategy. They're not looking at the analytics that are coming from it. They're just seizing the opportunity of what most of the time is affordable units to get their message out of there. But it's not dealing with the bigger picture. I think classic examples of that, especially in Facebook world, is Hump Day and Fun Friday and things like that. It's not every brand in the world needs to celebrate that. You need to sort of sit back and actually find out who you are. And ultimately, that's where the discipline and strategy will fit in. Getting down to your brand tone of voice, getting down to the alignment with the marketing calendar, then really developing content around it. So what happens, look to the year, what happens in the real world as well as the virtual, and then plan things in quarters. We then also have a topical response in the sense if an opportunity arises, we can make content on the fly. But ultimately, we only ever advertise, and I think you have to be sort of put the filter here of social, is when people engage with our content. We don't advertise to start with. We want to find the right message and then amplify it, scale it from there. And that, it's kind of giving you permission to take it further rather than beating people around the head, which is normally the approach of sort of a media landscape where you're guaranteeing impressions and you're just showing this banner until you're to the point of distraction, whereas native is about treading more carefully. And analytics kind of goes without saying these 4 things, but many people don't look at the analytics and don't look at the way that the content is being picked up and it's traveling, but also looking at the insight that's coming from that as well. We've done some amazing things which purely have been guided to us by the actual consumers that are on the pages that are telling us about where they want to see things going. So that's been a great thing for the content team to bring stuff around. What keeps us true and focused in these platforms is basically what we call a strategy on a page. But anyway, we just simply boil down the strategy to this diagram, which is who are we hoping to engage, and we boil that down to the target audience. Why will they join the page in the first place, or the profile? How will they actually engage? So what type of participation are we wanting? And also, what do we want the page to actually communicate? So we split that down into content percentages. I'll show you how this works with a brand in a minute. And then boil it down to a social purpose, which is really looking for an active statement of why, of how all the content sort of builds around it. Then we simply go into a tone of voice, the for and against, and also the rules of engagement. And this is really good at rallying a team that might be on the inside and outside of the brand. So obviously we're a creative services agency, so sometimes we just write the strategy, and this goes back into the community management team, and they're using it as a guide. Other times we're using our own community guys to actually run it. So it keeps everyone true. It allows multiple copywriters to work on it, allows other brands to, and companies, if you're doing an affiliate thing, to get a focus on how you're running your page and where they might fit in. And now I'll show you it in context. So this is a case study for a flavoured milk, and probably many of you will actually know it, which is oat. What's really interesting about it is when we inherited the brand, it had been with dairy farmers for years, and you can probably tell I'm a POM, so I was sort of on Google looking around, and I found that there was this place on the way up to Newcastle, which was a milk bar, which was sort of famous for oat and stuff like that. But mostly what I found was everyone thought it had died, and it was a deleted brand. And there was a reason for that, because Parmalat bought the license for oak, but before dairy farmers passed it over, they literally ran it into the ground. They made a thing called Classic that kind of basically replaced it in a lot of the stores that they had distribution in. So oak had just kind of quite simply disappeared. And we were tasked with kind of getting it back on its feet again, which was quite a big task at the time because there was no footprint whatsoever online. Everyone thought it was gone, and distribution was ruined. But where we started this was with this TVC.
Are you hungry thirsty? What's hungry thirsty you are? Stop asking things, I'm talking. Hungry thirsty is when you are neither hungry nor thirsty, but a bit of both. It's a state of weak indecision where you're not just sitting on the fence, it's sitting on you and it's laughing. That's how weak it is. There is only one cure for hungry thirsty, and that's oak. With its full strength and full taste, it's full on. Oak won't just hit the spot, it'll kill the spot and dress inappropriately at the spot's funeral. Oak, kill hungry thirsty dead.
What was really interesting was we took essentially this full-flavoured, full-strength flavoured milk that was sort of living in a space of people were cutting their sugar content and making sort of using skim milk and all that kind of stuff, but we flipped it on its head and made it a benefit. You know, if you're going to indulge, you might as well indulge. So the brand essence of oak is authentic, but during some research groups, we actually found people were talking about, oh, it's for neither when you're hungry or thirsty. And what was really great here was the team sort of took that insight and just lived and breathed it, and this was the result of that. Now, the funny thing at the time is I'm responsible for digital at the Monkeys, so we were there going, no, we need to build some profiles online. But at the time, the brand manager didn't want to do that. But we could see that this was something that people wanted to discuss and talk about. So we had this sort of situation where the brand had no destination whatsoever, but everyone started making destinations. So I think we had in total about 15 Facebook pages set up just by fans of the ad that wanted to discuss it. Some of them had about 50 fans on them. But overall, I think there was probably about 1,000 people who kind of got together and we were discussing this. Urban Dictionary had been updated with the term hungry thirsty and was taking lines from this. So we sort of missed this opportunity. We kind of had seen it coming, but the brand manager at the time didn't want to go there. And we were like, no, we need to get this thing back on track or we're going to lose hungry thirsty, which is our word. And what was really interesting was one of the team were flying interstate, and I think it was a Virgin stewardess said, came on the mic and said, we've got snacks for when you're either hungry or when you're hungry, thirsty. And it's like, oh my God, if we don't own this thing quickly, we're going to lose it. So anyway, the team got together and we basically built this strategy on a page for Oak. And when it comes down to the social purpose of Oak, primarily in Facebook, although we are on Twitter now, we've done some stuff on Twitter with the last part of this, is we're asking people to join the fight against hungry, thirsty. It's that point of indecision. It's when people are actually kind of being a bit crap. I think classic example is, pulling a push door or, really mincing your words or whatever it is. But there's plenty of examples in life where you can kind of get around it. So we had this rich platform from which to build. But ultimately, if you look at our content pillars here, hungry, thirsty education is 40% of what we're doing. We absolutely have to own it. That word is Oak's and no one else's. And we wanted to own that occasion. So when it's used in common vernacular, we can kind of help people remedy it. Promotion was 25%. I think you see a lot of pages just do about 100% promotion, just thrash people with this. And then distribution was also another key thing that we had to deal with. And then ultimately product sits down here at 10%. So we're building this sort of universe that sits around Oak. I mean, if you boil it down, I think it's 5 flavours in total. But chocolate's really the key one. But ultimately, it is what it is. And what we were doing was building a universe around it. FMCG brands give you a little bit more room. So to kick things off in the social space, we started on YouTube.
I'm not on Facebook, and I'm not your friend. But let's not make this about us. This is about hungry, thirsty. The internet is drowning in it. So don't be weak and pathetic. Join the internet and kill hungry, thirsty dead.
So we've had 1.2 million views of that spot. And as you can see, our character's a lot of fun because we all sat there and went, well, he's not going to be on Facebook, is he? And so we used it to our advantage. And, this thing got picked up and had an earned life of its own. I mean, obviously, we did promote it to start with, but it actually got a life of its own and is now, it's still getting viewed today, but we've climbed up to about 1.2 million. But that basically directed people to our Facebook page. And we've done a good job of actually pulling people from some of those other pages, but ultimately we didn't run them. So, when you comment in those channels, you don't really pull a lot of people through. But anyway, we started from zero and we began to build this attitude, this destination, this fun space for which people can get into the mindset of hungry, thirsty. We had the Hall of Lame, which invited people to submit friends that were being particularly crap, or perhaps a football star, or perhaps the English cricket team. Fun posts like this are sport. It's neither a fork or a spoon. It must be hungry, thirsty. We also had fun with the fact that when people sweared on the page, we could do things like no swearing. Your mouth can be indecisive sometimes. It doesn't know what it wants to say and starts sprouting swear words instead. That's hungry, thirsty talking. Shut it up with an Oak. So everyone loved the sort of world that we were living in, and the copywriters that work on it, have so much fun with this brand. But we still had quite a big job to do, and we still had to work on this distribution factor, and lots of people were loving this world but couldn't get the product. And so we set about actually fixing that. And the case study I'm going to show you now is something that we've won some great accolades with, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But the fact is we could not do this until this foundation was built. And this foundation took about 6 months to put it in perspective. So this is why I feel that brand is really important, because you have to kind of have this narrative arc and this character that grows before you can do these big stunts. Whereas advertising works on the principle a lot of the time of just going off with a bang, all guns blazing, everyone listen to me, and you've gone in 3 months. This is about building a permanent persona. So let me run this and it'll do a lot of talking for you.
Bring out the phone, please, sir. This is a reverse robbery. Lock of the store that opens very close on the clock of the phone. Come on. Everyone knows there is only one cure for a store that does not stock oak, and that is a reverse robbery. Tell us if your store needs doing, and we'll do the rest. So it's a reverse robbery. This one, boys, let's hold the sign. So it's a reverse robbery. On the top of the start, you've done the one, sir. We're just going to move the jar.
Eggnog? At the eggnog.
Okay, this is a reverse robbery. Pop, get up. Yeah. Okay, there's a nice coffee in there. Are you Steve's dad? Yeah. This is a reverse robbery. Where's your fridge? Where's the fridge? There we go. Okay, rack 'em and stack 'em. Yeah, quick.
So we had a lot of fun doing that, as you can imagine. But it was an idea that actually lived in the agency for probably about a year before we did it, and it was quite funny. Well, not funny, hard, holding back the creatives who were mad keen to get it out there. But ultimately, it served us well because we had this foundation from which to build when we dropped it. That obviously lived across YouTube and Facebook, and it also had its own brand tab, and it allowed you to sort of submit all your stuff. But the truth is, I hope what you're seeing there is the fact that we're building this story with our audience, and it's one that's ongoing. But with a strong strategy at the heart of it, it allows everyone to get behind it and build upon it. It gives everyone a clear signpost. So I've kind of got down to 6 principles, which I think will help all of you sort of enter this world. And I think they're applicable to both social and editorial. I think the thing with social that's particularly different is the fact that you are the editor as well. So you've got to sort of play true to your brand strat and not get pushed over when people just want to post stuff and really test whether it's the persona you want to be. So yeah, I've been harping on about it, but be true to your brand purpose and lock it down and then allow everything to build from that. Create user-first experiences. Context is key, so you need to really know the channel. You need to get your head around it. You know, we were talking earlier about Twitter etiquette. You know, we're all probably getting better at hashtags and ats and all this kind of stuff and using the right appropriate one to get stuff into news feeds. It's the same with every channel. It's got a certain way of living, and you need to toggle between who the brand needs to be and what that platform is, and find that sweet spot in the middle. Plan, schedule, and evaluate your content. We work on a principle of planning in quarters, and it works quite well. We work on getting the whole entire marketing calendar. It's really important to know what's happening offline and online. If you look at the mental numbers of social mobile use, I think it's 975 million people use Facebook per month now on mobile. I think 50% of BuzzFeed's audience is on mobile when they're receiving that news. I think Twitter is like 53 or something like that. 76, look at that. So you've got to bear in mind that if someone's walking past a bus with your ad on it, that's got an opportunity to engage just as much as fitting into their newsfeed, which they might be using when they're wasting time. So you need to sit around that universe and have a perspective on it and try different things. The thing that's really awesome about Twitter and Facebook is the fact you can try stuff discreetly. I think the problem is we've got this sort of inherent thing of we don't let anything out unless it's completely polished. That's okay, that's our job. But if you don't promote these things, hardly anyone's going to see them. That's how these companies make money. So the truth is, you can put something out, try it. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't work. You just take it down and try a different tact, change the wording. The beauty is now, I mean, I'm still getting my head around Twitter, to be truthful. We've done some activity there. But on Facebook, if you post stuff and it doesn't resonate, only 3% of your entire audience will ever see it. If it resonates, you'll climb to 15%. But if you want to kick it, you have to put page post ad unit on it, and you'll get up to 80%. So it's really important to just try and have confidence to do it, because that's the best way to learn. Only scale once people have interacted. Sort of ladders back to the other point. It keeps us honest. It means that people like the content we put out there, therefore lift it, rather than going the other way around, which is, hey, we can target everyone and just thump them around the head. Measure against your business goals. There's a point of being here. It's not just to, you have a lot of marketing managers that someone comes to you, we just need to be on Facebook. And it's kind of like, well, no, you don't need to be on Facebook. You need to work out how you are going to be on Facebook and what you're going to do with Twitter. And then ladder it back to what your business is about. It's really, really important. And you can achieve those goals in social channels. And then finally, understand the numbers and use the insights. All of these platforms have the most powerful analytical tools you've ever seen. You need to roll your sleeves up and just get in there. Understand what they mean and turn them into real actions. I mean, we did a campaign for Icebreak, which is a sister drink to Oat, called WA Delivery. There's all these people just screaming out for Icebreak in WA. They didn't sell it over there. But we got 10,000 likes. We put a truck on the road and drove there and gave it to them. That was 5 people to start with complaining about it not being there. We turned it into an entire campaign and put people on the road up there. And it was celebrated. They now sell Icebreak in WA about a year later. But that type of stuff is just being given to you. You just need to listen. So I hope you found the case study interesting. I thought it was a good metaphor for how we bring this stuff to life. It's also a bit of fun. But ultimately, you can all bring this discipline to your brands and to the pages and the editorial that you're putting out there. So thank you very much.